Good afternoon and welcome to December's Power Hour, Academy Accounts Return. Before we hear from our experts, just a little bit of housekeeping. Next slide, please. This session is being recorded. The recording and slides will be shared after the event. Please use the chat box to ask questions. We aim to answer as many questions as possible in the time available. However, we are unable to answer questions specific to a school or trust. We may not publish similar questions into the chat, so please use the like button to upvote any question you would like the team to answer. There will be a Tell Us How We Did survey at the end of the presentation. And now I will hand over to Amy, who is one of our experts, to take you through the Power Hour. Thanks, Amy.
Good afternoon, everyone. And today we'll be talking about the Academy Accounts Return. This session will cover an overview of the accounts return, the process for closed trusts, the benchmarking section, and how to get your accounts return approved and submitted. And we'll also talk about updates to the form for the 24-25 reporting period. Next slide, please. Firstly, what is the accounts return and why do we collect the data? The accounts return is an online form that collects financial data every year from over 2,500 Academy trusts, and the deadline for submission this year is 28th of January 2026. The financial data we collect helps to produce the sector annual report and accounts, also known as the SARA, for Academy trusts, and this is a mandatory return that's produced in line with IFRS as described in HM Treasury's Financial Reporting Manual. The data we collect allows policy areas to understand the financial health of the sector and covers specific topics such as executive pay and related party transactions. Next slide, please. So what data does it ask for? Well, we collect information on the following areas. We've got the SOFA, balance sheet assets, land and buildings, balance sheet funds and other disclosures, balance sheet liabilities, benchmarking, and transfers and conversions. And some of these sections ask for more detailed information than what we find in the financial statements, whereas some sections are not found in the financial statements at all. Next slide, please. There are key differences between the accounts return and the financial statements. Now, as previously stated, the data within the accounts return helps to produce the SARA, and the SARA is prepared according to IFRS, whereas financial statements are prepared according to the Charities Statement of Recommended Practice under FRS 102. And because they both use different reporting frameworks, there are some areas that the accounts return requires additional information or more detail. The additional information we require, so we've got within the staff cost section, we require a detailed breakdown, and wages and salaries are split into 3 further categories, which is teachers, leadership, and administration and support. For staff numbers, permanent and temporary staff numbers should be full-time equivalent or FTE figures, which differs from the requirement in the financial statements, which requires an average headcount with an optional FTE disclosure allowed if preferred. The AR also includes a granular breakdown of grants into revenue and capital, and these are broken down into categories such as DFE, DFE group and other, and then broken down into more detailed rows. And final example is the detail that we require for land and buildings. We collect additional data because the method for recognising land and buildings in the SARA is different from local accounts. The AR also collects benchmarking data, and this is used to populate the Financial Benchmarking Insights tool, and we'll cover this in more detail later in the presentation. Next slide, please. The next topic we'll cover is the process for closed trusts. The first stage of this process is the receipt of a commission email detailing what submissions are required and the deadlines for these. Next slide, please. And the second step depends on the type of closure. We have 2 types of closures. And these are closure on the last day of the academic period, which for this reporting period is the 31st of August 25, or trusts that close on any other day within the academic year. Next slide, please. So for closure at the end of the period, we require 2 returns, and these are a full 24-25 AR, which is completed on the online form, and a standalone 1-day AR. So we require the 1-day AR to identify what balances are being transferred to the receiving Academy Trust. Next slide, please. A closure within the academic year, the Trust must complete a closing AR. And before the form goes live, we accept submissions using the Excel workbook, but as the form is now live, it must be submitted online. And just a reminder that your auditors must sign off the closing AR, and it must reflect all the transferring and closing balances of the Trust. Next slide, please. And now we'll move on to the benchmarking section. So looking at what benchmarking data is used for. Well, the data provided is used to build the database of information on the spending of Academy Trusts, and this enables trusts to compare their information with other trusts and can be based on general, SEN, performance and workforce characteristics. It helps to inform the financial benchmarking self-assessment tool, and we'll look at this in more detail in the next slide. Next slide, please. So the Benchmarking and Insights tool is the principal place for trusts to examine their financial data and benchmark their spending, and it can be used in various ways. And some examples are to benchmark spending against other similar trusts, identify areas for improvement and share best practice, producing workforce deployment plans with the curriculum and financial planning tools, easy access to commercial resources, guidance and frameworks, and report building to share analysis with stakeholders. We've shown a couple of screenshots here just to see what the tool looks like, and you can access the tool by searching for Schools Financial Benchmarking and Insights tool online. Next slide, please. If you want to know when you can see your data, for 24-25, the data will be available in February. Until then, you can see 23-24 data. It's really important to get the data within the benchmarking section correct before you submit, as we can't rectify errors once the data has been published. And errors do affect the reliability of the data, so it is in the sector's interest to record it correctly. Next slide, please. The following slides are examples of how the benchmarking section is displayed in the accounts return. And in this table, you can see a list of academies within a trust. This list is pre-populated from standing data, and if you click on the academy, it will show the benchmarking fields for completion. And the Academies dashboard lists all the academies within a trust and is really useful for navigating between academies. Next slide, please. In this slide, you can see a selection of tables recording income and expenditure for a single academy trust, or the tables you'd see at academy level for a multi-academy trust. And again, it's important to allocate costs accurately to individual academies to ensure the data is correct. And this means that the benchmarking tools are fit for purpose. Next slide, please. So the data we require for benchmarking is data on revenue, income and expenditure at central and academy level. And single academy trusts need to complete this at an academy level, and multi-academy trusts need to complete this at central and academy level. Next slide, please. And now I'll hand over to Mahesh to go through how to get your AR approved and submitted.
Thank you, Amy. So I will be taking you through the approval and submission process for the accounts return. So how do you go about submitting and approving your accounts return? So the first step is to make sure that all relevant parties have access to the form. So this can be found within the overview section of the form in the external auditor table, as can be seen on the slide. It's very important to make sure that the details you've entered are correct, so that your accounts return trust approver and external auditor approver have the relevant access to the accounts return form. It's a good idea to check this at the earliest possible stage rather than at the end. The last thing you want to do is reach the submission stage a few hours before the deadline and realise that the accounts return trust approver or the external auditor approver doesn't have the required access, as it means you might not be able to submit your return until this has been sorted out. So please check this at the beginning of the process. That's really helpful. Next slide, please. So step 2 is to check that all of the tables available to you have been filled in and all validations have been cleared. This may sound very obvious, but it's very easy to miss something. So please make sure to expand all headers within the Academy's Accounts Return Index page and just double check that those have all been completed. To do this, you simply click Open All within the top right hand corner of the index page, as you can see within the screenshot within the slides. So look through all of the available tables and just ensure that a green completed box is displayed next to each of them. So what you're looking out for is any grey not started boxes, any yellow in progress boxes, or any red error boxes. Those are the things you wouldn't want to see within that completed. So if there are any red error boxes, this means that you've not cleared all of the validations within that table. So the approval and submission sections of the accounts return will not be made available until all of those validations have been cleared. Next slide, please. So step 3, so this is to complete the approval and submission tables. So the first section is the prepare a declaration section, and this section is not mandatory. So this is a chance for the accounts return preparer to confirm that they've completed the accounts return accurately. Once this page is completed, the accounts return will become read-only for the preparer. If you don't wish to include a prepare a declaration within your accounts return, then please select no within question 29 of the questionnaire table, and you can find your questionnaire within the overview section of the form. So the next section is the Academy Trust Declaration. So this step is mandatory, and it should be completed by a finance officer within the trust. If the individual is the trust accounting officer, they should select yes under the question, are you the accounting officer? And then read the declaration that appears and click the final box to approve the accounts return. If the accounts return trust approver is not the accounting officer, the form will ask you for confirmation that the approver has the authorization of the accounting officer to be able to approve the return. Once the return has been approved, the accounts return trust approver should inform the trust's external auditor approver that the trust has approved the accounts return, and the return will now be locked in a read-only mode for the accounts return trust approver. It will then move on to the next section, which is the external auditor approval. So this step is mandatory. Again, the external auditor approver's role is to review the data which has been inputted into the form to ensure that it's consistent with the audited financial statements and that it's been properly extracted from the financial records and presented in the accounts return in accordance with the guidance notes that have been issued by the Department for Education. If the external auditor approver has approved the accounts return and wants to revoke their approval, this can be done by ticking the reject option box on the external auditor declaration page. Next slide, please. So the final and the fourth and final step is the submission, and again this step is mandatory. So once the external auditor approver completes their approval declaration, the submission screen will then become available and they'll be able to submit the return to the Department for Education on behalf of the trust. Please note that you might find that your external auditor approver for the accounts return can sometimes be different to the auditor who signed off the trust's financial statements. So just be aware of that. And the trust should note that once the external auditor approver has approved and submitted the return, no further amendments can be made to the accounts return form as it becomes read-only for every user, and any subsequent issues will need to be raised by contacting our inquiry service using the online customer help portal, and it won't be possible for us to amend your submitted return. So again, just a clear note for the external auditor approver, just to double check everything before they go ahead and submit. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at the updates that have been made to the accounts return for this year. Next slide, please. So there's 3 key updates that have been made this year that I'm going to highlight. So the first of which is the overview section is now available to download. So this allows you to see the trust and academy level data and questionnaire responses for the current and previous years. So this change had been made directly on the back of feedback from trusts for this option to be made available. So we've done that. The other changes are due to changes in reporting requirements. So the first of which is the fields for the recording the Teaching School Hub income and expenditure and the COVID-19 income have both been removed. So for Teaching School Hubs, this is going to impact upon the SOFA section, and the benchmarking section. And then for the COVID-19 income, this affects the SOFA section. So income and expenditure for Teaching School Hubs will still need to be reported, but this is now grouped in with general income and expenditure in the relevant fields of the form. So next slide, please. So these are the key dates for the accounts return for 2024-25. So the collection period is currently underway, and we've had a few submissions so far, and we've had some users already automate also. So the deadline for the return is the 28th of January 2026. And we have the following upcoming Microsoft Teams calls, which you may be interested in attending. These sessions generally give you an opportunity to sort of ask any questions and get any queries out the way regarding your accounts return in a quick and timely fashion. So the sessions that we've got coming up are on the 8th of January. We've got one covering how to clear validations. We've got one on the 14th of January covering benchmarking. We've got one on the 19th of January covering how to get your accounts return approved and submitted to the DFE. And then we've got a couple of sessions before the deadline on the 27th and the 28th. And we'll share the link to you in the chat for the Eventbrite to sign up for these if you're interested, or you have any queries closer to the time, feel free to join one of these sessions, and at the end of each of these sessions we have a question and answer which we can cover any of your questions within that. Next slide, please. So thank you for listening to our presentation on the Academy's accounts return. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have in the chat, but before we move on to your questions within the chat, myself and Amy are now just going to go through some frequently asked questions. I'll hand over to Amy with the first question.
Thanks, Mahesh. Right, the first question, my return is greyed out, or I'm unable to access a particular section.
Yep. So the first thing to check is when you go onto the accounts return form, you must complete the first 4 sections of the overview table. So once you've completed those 4 sections, the rest of the form will be unlocked and you'll be able to complete the relevant sections of the form. If this doesn't resolve your problem, then the other thing to do is to check. You'll find some sections still grayed out. If you go to the questionnaire, which can be found within the overview section, ensure that you've answered all of the questions correctly, as answering the questions in this section will unlock different aspects of the form.
Okay. We're a closed trust that are trying to complete the AR. Certain sections of the AR are greyed out for us and we've triggered a validation error.
Yep. So when there is a transfer, we wouldn't expect any current assets or liabilities to be left at the closing trust. We'd expect a nil balance sheet. So that's why the current assets and liabilities sections will be greyed out within the form if you are a closed trust. So a closed trust would be required to complete the transfers and conversion section to report the balances of their fixed assets, current assets and liabilities, and pensions and other funds being transferred to the receiving trusts.
How do we download previous year reports?
So on your online form on the Academy Index page, you'll see an option down the right-hand side of the screen that gives you the option to download the previous return. So please select the format that you'd prefer it in. So there's 2 options, PDF and Excel, and they'll give you the option to download the 23-24 return or the 22-23 return.
What shall I do if my pre-populated data is incorrect?
Yep, so first it's really important that if you haven't already checked your data in the overview table of the form, we'd advise to do that as soon as possible. But if you have noticed some incorrect data, then please get in touch with the team as soon as possible, contacting us on the standing data email address that a member of our team will post in the chat now. So if any of your pre-populated financial data is incorrect, then just please contact that financial reporting mailbox. And again, that email address is going to be put in the chat now as well.
What should I be reporting in Academy's contribution to trust within the benchmarking section?
Yeah, so that would be any multi-academy trust central costs, also can be known as top slicing arrangements. So they are charged to academies, should be entered in that line. So typically this should match the distribution in note 11, central services of the Academy's accounts direction model accounts. So the amounts charged to each academy must be entered in positive numbers, and then the corresponding MAT value as a negative number. So this line should equal 0 once all charges and contributions are netted off. So please do not include any GAG pooling in this line, as we did see last year that this was an issue that some trusts had, and so the numbers didn't net to nil. So again, we've updated our guidance, our chart of account code guidance to rectify this and make this a bit more clear. So if you are looking into this or having any issues, refer to that first. But if you've got any other further questions, feel free to pick those up with us directly.
Can we have an extension to the deadline?
So no, so due to our reporting requirements, we're unable to extend the deadline. So we advise to submit your return as soon as possible. You may receive chaser messages once the deadline has passed. So if you can supply us with a date, the date with which you intend to submit the return, we'll make a note of this. But just to note that if you do submit after the deadline date, or the benchmarking data will not be published for late return. So if you haven't published it by the deadline date, your information won't be included on the benchmarking data that we have within the department.
Okay. And for the accounts return, who is defined as a leader for staff pay reporting?
Yep. So leadership would be persons having authority and responsibility for planning, directing and controlling the activities of a reporting entity, directly or indirectly. So including any director, whether executive or otherwise. If they have any teaching responsibilities, then you'd need to include them in STF 010. And if they have no teaching responsibilities, then we'd expect you to include them within leadership, so STF 020.
And finally, I'm an auditor assisting academies in their preparation of the accounts return. The trusts have added me as a preparer, but in my DFE signing account, they are appearing as separate organisations and not through the auditor's dashboard. Is this correct?
No, so that's not correct. So as an auditor, you should only have access to the trust's accounts return through your auditor dashboard. So if you could see the trust organisation listed separately, it means that you've not been added to the trust's DFE sign-in account, and you'll need to be request to be removed. The only way an auditor should be linked to an accounts return is by having the auditor details added to the external auditor details section within the overview of the form. And once the external auditor section is marked as complete, the trust will appear on the auditor dashboard within the auditor's DFE sign-in account.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that concludes our presentation for today. Just looking at the chat, I can see we've got a couple of queries in there around auditors and Q&A sessions. So we are dealing with queries quickly, but I think the specific issue that Michelle's mentioned probably needs a more direct response. So we would ask you to email us at our academies.financial reporting address, which we will put in the chat there for you. In response to the Q&A sessions, we do offer these just before deadline, just in case anyone's got any last minute queries. We do also do sessions all through the collection period, and you can all contact us at the academies.financial reporting email address and also at the customer help portal on the government website. So you can contact us at any point. You don't have to wait for those sessions. I don't know if we've got any more queries coming through. We've also got the links into the chat for the other Teams calls that we're running throughout the collection period. I think that's all the queries I can see for now. Look, yeah, so just to hand back to Tracy.
Thank you, Amy and Mahesh, and thank you to everybody else for dialing into this session. Next slide, please. We really do value your feedback on how we did today and any thoughts you may have for future Power Hours. Please click on the link or scan the QR code to fill in the short survey. The next Power Hour is DfE Energy for Schools on the 29th of January, which you can register via Eventbrite, and we look forward to you joining us for this session. Thank you.